Hi, I'm Felix Bruehl, and today in this presentation I want to reflect on my experience. I'm writing the consultancy report for the course module Building Business Insights under the supervision of Dr. Ekaterina Skoglund. First, an overview, what this reflection will cover. First, I will talk about how the portfolio meets the different learning outcomes of the course. Then I will go into why this experience matters for my future role and me continuing to guide this business, that is my family's business. And then also I will go into what I still need to develop in the future that wasn't really that much part of this learning experience. So about the portfolio itself, as an introduction, this is my family's business, and I wrote it from the perspective of an outside consultant. So I did conduct some interviews with the founder, one for problem identification and one for the prioritization of the solution paths. And I did a survey with potential customers. Then I actually did end up writing the report. I developed a prioritization matrix, and then at the end, also in this, I am reflecting on my learning experience. The basic question of this report is that I want to answer the question how Delight Sales Hong Kong, DSHK, can double its revenue in 48 months without external capital like bank loans and stuff like that, but rather through an organic growth strategy. The first learning outcome revolves around the problem solving and how I went about that. So the way I went about that is I developed the logic trees as also outlined in the assessment brief. And then I applied different theories like the Kotler and Keller and the McKinsey 7S reports to help me understand the problem and how to go about solving it. And then I got some different sources also from the interviews, from the survey, and then looked at ways how this problem can be addressed. And the key insight that I ended up revealing that was new to me is that the bottleneck for growth is not how we handle the day-to-day business with suppliers and logistics and warehouse management, but it's rather market access or the lack of it. The second learning outcome is about the critical evaluation of the literature. And I wanted to integrate some diverse perspectives into this report so I don't have like a one-sided view. And I found an interesting dichotomy of academic and practitioner sources. So like, it was very interesting for me to find out that a lot of the like academic research focused a lot on the relationship selling. So you as a salesperson get to know the customer, understand them, talk to them, and then they develop trust and want to work with you. And what I found on the other side was that a lot of the business literature was very much emphasizing that it was important to be findable through organic means, that you don't end up approaching the customer with a salesperson or something like that, but rather that the customer finds you and reaches out to you, so that the customer comes to you, finds you, and the proof is done by you, right? You make the material that they find. And of course, I used the Harvard referencing throughout the entire report as outlined in the assessment brief. The second learning outcome is about the research design and how I mix different methods to investigate this problem that I identified. As I said earlier, I did some interviews, two in fact, one with the founder about what is actually the problem in the business, looking at some operational issues, looking at some geopolitical issues, looking at some marketing and sales issues and how they affect different aspects of the business and in the end how they affect growth. Then I did a survey with existing and potential customers. So I reached out on LinkedIn to some of our existing customers, and also I made a post in a forum for for people that source in China. And then I also used some internal data, like our past outreach campaign that didn't go as planned. Then I ended up defining some very clear research questions and methodologies for the 4 key issues that I identified. And then I applied that, right? So one was, for example, the thematic analysis for the ICPs, and that I identified for the customer personas. And it was very important to identify the different themes that were bothering different sets of customers, and then to be able to cluster them together in the actual ICPs. And this really gave some very interesting insight about the potential customers that we could be serving that we never even thought of approaching, because we found a lot of the customers that we would think of were people like business owners with smaller consumer brands, but we actually found out that we can work really well with, for example, OEM suppliers and stuff like that. Then the 4th learning outcome is about the communication and reporting and how that was done. And I did follow the assessment brief step by step. It was really important for me to not mix up as much, because I'm used to academic writing and I like to get really creative with stuff. But this was like a new kind of writing for me. So it was very important for me to really try to stick very close to the assessment brief and how it outlines the different sections and how it wants them done. And then, of course, that's why I did the logic trees and also the pyramid in the conclusion, the way that is outlined. And what's also important for the communication and the report is that this report and its findings really outline some very clear next steps for DSHK and for us to do, and will like really provide some actionable steps of how we can really double the revenue in 48 months. This is really important. The 5th learning outcome, the reflective practice, which this is a part of, really asked me to take a step back and think about myself and this learning experience and what it did to me. And what was very interesting for me is I overcame a significant personal bias that I hadn't noticed before, because I was always approaching this issue, even in this experience at the start, from the perspective of a business owner, where I was used to the problems, I was used to like the solutions that we had thought of, and I was looking especially at the China +1 option, which ended up being not useful in the report. And really this learning experience of taking a step back and looking at an issue that I'm personally involved with from the perspective of an outsider, sort of like, how would I advise a friend on this issue, right? How would I advise a client on this issue? That was a really valuable experience. And another thing that really helped me was really noticing again that I need to work on my time management, because at the start of this experience, I was really committed to some issues in the company, and I totally underestimated the time it would take for me to really dig through the whole problem identification and solution prioritization. That was actually really difficult. And yeah, this report really challenged me to go from a family member of a family business into the perspective of an outside objective consultant that is not like emotionally tied to the business. That was a very interesting experience. The 6th learning outcome focuses on the independent learning and how I manage myself and adapted to challenges that I faced. So one thing that I really thought was very very good experience in this independent learning was me researching SEO, like the search engine optimization, and how that can affect expected results for an outreach campaign. So I did briefly touch on SEO when we managed the first outreach campaign, but it almost seemed a bit like some black voodoo magic that I never really understood. And this research experience really challenged me to look deeply at search engine optimization. How does it work? How does, for example, Google determine the search rank, or who gets recommended what? And that was very interesting to learn, and I had never been challenged to approach it that way. Then another really cool step of the independent learning was to apply the feedback that I got from Dr. Skogland. We had regular meetings, and she brought up different points each time, and then I went back into the report and I looked at her feedback, and I thought of, okay, well, she gave me feedback here. Where else is that relevant? And that was really interesting. And then, of course, the entire research, online sources, survey, and the interviews, I conducted them independently. I've touched a bit on how this is relevant for my career in the future, but to really state it, it's really prepared me for my future in this company. So I learned how to frame an issue like the stagnating revenue growth in a strategic long-term perspective, and not in a short-term, oh, how can we increase, how can we find another supplier for this customer, or how can we cut costs in the logistics here, but rather in long-term, like how can we direct this business's capabilities to new types of customers, for example. And the actionable steps that I got from this, they have really helped me understand the real world application. And they will really help me when I move into the business as an owner to become successful. The things that I still need to develop that were not really part of this assignment, but also that I struggle with outside of this assignment, is financial modeling and forecasting. I'm still a bit unsure how, especially regarding this case, how I would go about that. I can see how much sourcing a customer would do in Asia, but to estimate the potential revenue growth per customer or stuff like that, that is difficult because everything feels so fluid. Leadership and team management, this experience as well as a lot of other uni experiences were a lot about individual experiences. But in the future, I'll be responsible for leading and managing teams of 10, 15 people, maybe 20. And this was not addressed in this assignment at all, of course, and this is something I need to work on seriously. Then, yes, we did touch on market research a little bit in this assignment, but really advanced market research is something that I struggle with and for which I will hire outside help. And also digital marketing execution. I know that digital marketing is important, especially for this sort of growth plan that we have, but how to execute that plan, right? That is something that I'm still a bit unsure of. And so the next steps for me and DSHK will be that coming next year, I really want to apply these findings from this report and the lessons in practice. I want to have more responses to the survey. I want to know more issues that customers have. And I want to develop better content for them so they can find me. And I also want to develop some way that I can contact customers and develop some systematized outreach response system where the communication with each individual customer doesn't take up as much effort because I need to think of everything anew every time. The leadership and the analytical learning will be a continuous effort that I'm going through. And then I hope that in Q2, maybe Q3 of 2026, I can actually see some growth in the business thanks to this experience. As a closing remark and as a sort of quote, I want to say that this model has shifted my mindset from managing individual symptoms that affect profitability or revenue, getting the extra iPhone case for that customer so we can have a bit more revenue here. And my focus has been shifted into how can we use and leverage our capabilities to address an entire new type of customer that we haven't even considered before. And this really gives a clear direction for me as a leader in the business to reach the goal that I have set out. And I'm actually really grateful for this experience, that it wasn't like I'll quickly type a report and I'm done with it, but this was actually really challenging and good to do, and I really appreciate the challenge. Thank you.